Number 10. The Star of David. The Star of David, also known as the Magen David, which means Shield of David in Hebrew, is the most identifiable symbol of Judaism in the modern world. Just like the sign of the cross is the universal symbol of Christianity, the Star of David is often worn by Jews and appears on the Israeli flag. But the Magen David wasn't always an exclusively Jewish symbol. It was the Jewish community of Prague in what is now the Czech Republic that adopted the Star of David as their official symbol in the 17th century. Before that, this symbol had a history that spanned countries, cultures, and religious beliefs. Long before the Jewish faith and Zionists adopted the symbol, the Magen David appeared in ancient Eastern cultures. The Buddhists used the symbol of the six-pointed star to represent peace and harmony, and it can still be found in decorative works. The six-pointed star was also a popular symbol in pagan traditions, was used often decoratively in churches built during the 1st century, and was also used occasionally in Muslim culture. So, while we may be surprised to see this now universally acknowledged symbol of Judaism in places like ancient Christian churches, mosques, Buddhist temples, or pagan ritual sites, before the 17th century Jews of Prague, this was completely normal, and in some places remains the case today. Number 9. Mark Twain and Halley's Comet. There's something oddly spooky about celestial bodies making predictable passes in plain view of the casual observer looking up at the night sky. This idea is no different when it comes to Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet was first discovered in 1758 by English astronomer Edmund Halley. It visibly passes the Earth every 74 to 75 years. It was last seen in 1986 and won't be seen again until 2061. Okay, so that's the basic rundown, but where's the coincidence in a predictable comet? Oddly enough, in 1835, Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, was born. The same year, Halley had made her pass by the Earth, burning her bright blue light into the sky. While Mark Twain was well known as one of the greatest American authors and humorists that ever put pen to paper, he was also a touch of a fortune teller, with this now famous quote: "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet." The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now, here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together. And by the sheer power of coincidence, he was correct. Twain died a year later in 1910 from a heart attack, only a day after Halley's brightest day. There are a slew of other theories and predictions based on Halley's Comet, but that's for another video. Number 8. The Unsinkable Woman. Violet Constance Jessup, born October 2nd, 1887, was considered the Unsinkable Woman after surviving 3 extreme naval disasters. By winning the worst lottery fate could offer, she was aboard the RMS Olympic in 1911, the RMS Titanic in 1912, and somehow the HMS Britannic in 1916, when they all suffered horrible accidents. Every single ship was owned by the transatlantic ship company White Star, where reluctantly Jessup got a job as a stewardess. During the 5th crossing of the Olympic, Jessup experienced her first major accident at sea. The largest ship of its time crashed into the HMS Hawke, poking holes in the Olympic's watertight compartments like tissue paper. Thankfully, although no one aboard was injured or killed, some could consider the event an omen for Jessup's career at sea. However, Jessup was undeterred, and a few friends convinced her to join up with White Star's brand new ship, the Titanic. Thanks to a fairly famous movie, we all know what happens next aboard the Titanic. However, Jessup's story is a touch different from the movie's Jack and Rose. This is what Jessup recalled about that fateful night. "I was ordered up on deck. Calmly, passengers strolled about. I stood at the bulkhead with the other stewardesses, watching the women cling to their husbands before being put into the boats with their children. Sometime after, a ship's officer ordered us into the boat, first to show some women it was safe. As the boat was being lowered, the officer called, 'Here, Miss Jessup, look after this baby,' and a bundle was dropped onto my lap. Jessup was rescued roughly 8 hours after the sinking of the Titanic, and amazingly went back to work at sea with the British Red Cross as a nurse during the First World War. While aboard the Britannic, the ship was hit by an underwater mine and began sinking rapidly. Jessup jumped to a lifeboat without the order of the captain and somehow survived. Jessup continued working at sea for another 43 years and died in 1971 at the age of 83. Talk about a wild history on the water. Do you think you'd go back to working as a ship's crew member after all of that? Number 7. Brothers in Arms. The Great War, or World War I, was one of the bloodiest conflicts known to man. With an estimated 40 million people killed during the various World War I battles across the globe, it's only fitting that the first and last British soldiers to be killed be buried right next to one another. Private John Parr was the first British soldier to be killed in the war. Historians actually disagree on the exact cause of his death. However, it is generally agreed that he died from German rifle fire while searching for a missing unit. While his body was never officially identified, we do know that he was only 14 when he joined the British Army in a territorial unit of the Middlesex Regiment in 1912. He was most likely killed on the 21st of August 1914. On the flip side of the coin, Private George Edwin Ellison was the last man to be killed in the Great War, a mere 90 minutes before the official armistice call was sounded. Ellison was 40 years old at the time of his death and survived 4 long years of trench warfare, including some of the worst fighting at the battles of Ypres and the Somme. To make matters even stranger, he died at the same location of his first ever firefight as part of the British Expeditionary Force retreating from Mons. Really makes you think about how war is just an endless circle. Number 6. Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg. It is a day that almost every American will never forget. September 11th, 2001. A day that almost took the lives of actor and musician Mark Wahlberg and the original creator of the hit animated show Family Guy, actor and comedian Seth MacFarlane, if it wasn't for these oddly specific coincidences. Mark Wahlberg, famous for being a singer and actor, was scheduled to fly on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane to hit the Twin Towers. Through a last-minute decision to not fly to Los Angeles via New York, but instead to attend a film festival in Toronto, Canada, Wahlberg was able to avoid tragedy. Unfortunately, Wahlberg later received criticism for stating that he would have personally stopped the attacks from happening, saying, quote, "If I was on that plane with my kids, it wouldn't have gone down like it did. There would have been a lot of blood in that first-class cabin, and then me saying, 'Okay, we're going to land somewhere safely, don't worry.'" He later had to retract his comments and apologize for his statements after a public outcry. As for Seth MacFarlane, the coincidence is a bit simpler. While MacFarlane was scheduled to be on the same flight as Wahlberg, he had a few too many drinks the night before and was too hungover to get to the airport in time, missing his flight. That they both managed to avoid the flight ultimately allowed them to make the movie Ted together several years later. Number 5. A Dead Man's Luck. Anyone who's purchased a lottery ticket or even one of the cheap scratch-offs you can find at the corner stores has a brief flicker of hope that they will be the one to win that huge jackpot. For one man in 1998, that dream came true, but only after being declared clinically dead for 14 minutes. Bill Morgan from the Australian coastal city of Melbourne. After Morgan suffered a heart attack that left him clinically dead and then comatose for 15 days, he went to a corner store and purchased a $5 scratch-off lottery ticket and won a car worth 30,000 Australian dollars. At the time, no one made a big deal of it until local news channels got wind of the story. The news team wanted to get a shot of Morgan reenacting the original win by having him buy another scratch-off lottery ticket. With a massive stroke of coincidence, Morgan scratched off the winning numbers to reveal that he had won another 250,000 Australian dollars live on broadcast news. Bill is still alive today, and while his original winning video went viral, he is just happy to get the extra years to spend with his wife, and even routinely buys the same $5 scratch-off lottery tickets. What are the chances? Do you play lotto or buy scratch-off tickets? Have you ever won anything? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe for more content. Number 4. Plum Pudding. A 19th century French poet by the name Émile Deschamps has probably one of the strangest set of coincidences on this list. Now, Deschamps is famous for 2 reasons. The first is his poem La Paix Conquise, written in 1812, which was so highly praised that it even caught Napoleon's notice. The other reason relates to an extremely English dessert, the humble plum pudding. A simple dessert made by combining milk, sugar, port or sherry, breadcrumbs, and of course, plums. This dessert is traditionally enjoyed in the foggy streets of London. An English immigrant to France with the extremely French-sounding name of Monsieur de Forquebus by chance introduces Deschamps to plum pudding when the poet was just a teenager. Years pass, and Deschamps is strolling past a cafe in Paris and sees they have plum pudding on the menu. He naturally walks in and orders one. However, the cafe had just sold the last one they have on hand to none other than Monsieur de Forquebus. The waiter even asks Forquebus if he was willing to share his plum pudding with Deschamps. Some years come and go, and Deschamps is at a dinner party with his friends, and the host announces the dessert for the evening is plum pudding. As a joke, Deschamps states that Forquebus must be at the party. Just then, without fail, Monsieur de Forquebus rings the doorbell. Forquebus wasn't even supposed to be at that particular dinner party. Just through pure coincidence, he had gotten the wrong address for an event he was in fact invited to. Number 3. True nature of solar eclipses. Humans have long been fascinated with the incredible nature of the solar eclipse. The earliest recorded history of this fascination goes back to stone tablets in Babylonia, around 2,500 years ago. Eclipses have both started and ended wars, created the backbone of religions, and have even been used to predict the future in the way of both good and bad omens. However, even with their spiritual and sometimes murderous history, they are nothing but a total coincidence. From our current understanding of the celestial duo, the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, and the sun is 400 times the distance from the earth than the moon. According to astronomers at the University of Hertfordshire in the UK, this exact size and distance similarity is the main reason that we're able to see eclipses at all. To add to this coincidence layer cake, because the distances between the Earth and the Moon are always changing, in the next few million years, eclipses will look totally different. The fact that humans are alive at the exact time that the Sun and Moon are the exact distance away that we are able to look up at the heavens and view this strange phenomenon is a coincidence in itself. Number 2. When life imitates art. There's an old adage that art often imitates life, and in the case of Edgar Allan Poe's 1838 book, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, that adage proved true, at least in reverse. Poe's book details a horrific tale of survival cannibalism, with a 4-man sailing crew getting lost at sea with no food or water, and results in the characters resorting to killing and eating one of the crew members, so the remaining crew may live. The character chosen to be eaten was named Richard Parker. The exact story happened in life to a 4-man sailing crew taking a small boat named the Mignonette from England to Australia in 1884. The Mignonette had to be taken the long way around because there were unsafe wind conditions in the Mediterranean Sea. Unfortunately for the crew of the Mignonette, they were sunk between the islands of St. Helena and Tristan da Cunha. The crew was left starving in a dinghy, and after 3 hungry weeks, the cabin boy, by the same fateful name of Richard Parker, fell ill, and the crew killed and ate him. Makes you wonder what books they had on board. Number 1. The first and last battles of the Civil War. War never changes. While started for a plethora of reasons, they almost always end the same way. The only thing that does change is the locations and weapons. However, in the American Civil War, the same man, Wilmer McLean, got to see the war start on his front lawn and end in his parlor. On the evening of July 18, 1861, a Union cannonball came smashing through McLean's kitchen wall, ruining his fireplace, home, and, most importantly, his dinner. This single cannonball was the very beginning of the First Battle of Bull Run. McLean was a successful grocer that inherited a 1,200-acre plantation just south of Washington, D.C. He lived there quite happily with his wife and 2 daughters before the Confederate soldiers brought the war quite literally to their backyard. As the bulk of the battle was concentrated around his property, McLean and his family relocated to South Central Virginia to safely escape the front lines and rented out the house and barn to Confederate forces. However, the war would follow McLean and his family until the very end. In April of 1865, with Union forces surrounding General Lee and the remaining Confederate forces, they were forced to sign the surrender treaty in the nicest room they could find. The room was McLean's front parlor. Unfortunately for McLean, Union forces stole everything not nailed down in the house, including the very desk the treaty was signed on. McLean was forced to move again and lived the rest of his days as a tax auditor for the IRS until his death in 1882. While war never changes, it without a doubt changed McLean's. Thanks for watching. Which one of these coincidences do you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.